Hi, so in this series of labs, this is what we're going to be building. Well, not the whole thing. You have a starting topology that I'm going to show you here in a moment, but this is ultimately what we're going to get to. So what part will you be adding? Well, from the starting topology that if you're in my class, you're seeing this, seeing the starting topology, but this is what you're going to be adding. So kind of with these links here and all this over here. Okay, some really cool things. We're going to be doing VLANs, trunking. We're going to know about voice over IP VLAN, the voice VLAN, do a little wireless. We're going to do routed ports. We're going to do ether channel, also known as link aggregation, where you see these little circles here. Um, and let's also do a little first hop redundancy protocol. Matter of fact, you see that over here, where it has the extra links between here. We'll talk about that later. Talk about all of this stuff later, but also going to do first hop redundancy protocol up here. Now, in my class, I talked about the entire setup here, where we have our enterprise network, and here's kind of the internet. And that but we'll get there. We'll get there. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording and bring up our starting topology. Okay, so this is our starting topology in the background. I'll show that in a moment. And here's the lab. So as you can see here, this is the part that you'll be adding. Okay, so what you'll be adding looks like this. And we'll be configuring these over the upcoming weeks and be adding some more links, but this is what we're going to accomplish today. Basically, in this lab, we're going to add all these devices. We're not going to configure any of the switches, but we are going to add the devices. And to these devices here, we are going to put the IP addressing. Okay. Also going to mention a few things about these multi-layer switches and the access points and that, but we're going to build out this, but we're not going to configure any of the switches in this lab. That'll start the next lab where we'll actually do VLANs and VLAN trunks. Now, as I mentioned in this lab, this is the device setup. So here are the devices that you'll be adding. Actually, I've done you a favor. You'll see here in a moment. I've actually added the actual devices and made it look like this. So it's all set up, or we're just going to do the connections. Okay, the connections, it's going to ultimately look like this. Okay, but to give you an idea of what we've configured here, you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 2960 switches, regular layer 2 switches, 2 3650 switches, not 3560, 3650. That's up here. These are all multi-layer switches. We have 10 end devices. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. What did I miss? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 PCs, 10 end devices that are PCs. One IP phone right there, and 2 laptops that will be connected to the access points. Okay, so what we're going to do is the cabling. Now I made this even easier for you. So let's get started with the actual lab and show you exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, so you're going to be doing mostly cabling, but a few other things as well. I've added all these devices. And what else have I done? I've put in these little notes, using the notes up here, showing the interfaces. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, I want to talk about these 3650 switches. Okay, so what we have to do on those and what you need to do starting here. So this is our starting topology. What we need to do is actually add the power supply. There's no power supply in here. Matter of fact, if I zoom in, now we actually have to drag and drop the power supply. In fact, before I go there, if I do CLI, it says device must be powered on. Okay, so I'm going to drag and drop power supply there. Matter of fact, if I go to CLI, you'll see, oh, it's booting up. Okay. All right, so that's one of them. We got to do it for both. So let's drag and drop. I'll zoom in again to get the full picture here. Just AC power supply. There we go. So that's one of the things that we need to do, that you will need to do. Okay. Next, we have this IP phone. It also, we're going to learn a lot about the IP phone here. Let me zoom in on this as well. It needs to get plugged in. The Packet Tracer does this for some devices and others not, but that's okay. All right. It's kind of cool. So we're just going to drag and drop this. I'm going to put it right there. All right. Now it will get powered up. Okay. All right. So let me close this. Now we can do the cabling. And in the lab, I talk about what's connected to what. From what device, from what port, using what cable, to which device and which port. Okay. But I've also made it nice and easy so we can see that right here. Okay. So this is what we're going to do with the cabling. Okay. I'm going to start that for us, and then I'll pause the recording and show you what we have gotten to. Okay, so down here, let's just start from the top, I guess. I'll do crossover cable, switch to switch crossover cable. So we're going from gig 101, as it says right here, right? Gig 101 to gig 01 here. There we go, just like I have right there. All right, we're going to do the same thing here. Gig 102 to gig 01. Crossover cables between the switches. Okay, let's do that real on these. Okay, did I do the right one? So one of the things that you can do is I'm going to go to Cisco Preferences, Packet Tracer Preferences, and I'm going to choose. I don't want to always show port labels. I've kind of done that for you there. See, that would actually show it gets quite messy. But I do want to show port labels when mouse over in Logical Workspace. So if I wand over this, I should see the port labels. And why aren't I seeing them? Let's do that again. I don't need to apply it. Oh, there we go. I guess I didn't do it. There we go. Now if I wand over it, there we go. Yep. So I can verify I've got the right ports. Okay. We do these. Fast Ethernet 1, Fast Ethernet 1, Fast Ethernet 2, Fast Ethernet 2. We're going to have spanning tree running here. That's why they go amber first. You're going to see one of these gets blocked. We'll do the same over here. And I'm going to share just a couple more of these. Okay, let's do the switches to the end devices. And for these, we're going to use straight through cables. So from Fast Ethernet 5. So use to Fast Ethernet. Use what I have here, by the way. Reason for that, because I'm going to be referring to these port numbers in later labs. So use the port numbers that I have labeled here. Okay, for example, Fast Ethernet 505, Fast Ethernet. Okay, now down, let's do these here. I'll talk about this. Is going to be Fast Ethernet 6. That's what's shown right there. Fast Ethernet 6, Fast Ethernet. Fast Ethernet 6. I tried to be consistent on all this, make it easier on you and me. Fast Ethernet 6, Fast Ethernet 6. Now we have a couple of things here. We have the IP phone, and we also have an access port, access point. Let's do the access point. It's also Fast Ethernet 5. So I'm going to go right from here to port 0. Okay. All right, we'll talk about how we get these laptops associated with the access point in a moment. And let me finish up this side here. Switch 1 fast Ethernet 505. So there we go. Now for this, so switch there. Notice I have 2 ports here, switch and PC. This will be a switch. Talk more about this later. Okay. And on this port here, we're going to go from the PC, fast Ethernet, to where it says PC. We'll talk about voice over IP, adding an IP phone, and what all of this is about a little later. Okay. So for now, I'm going to pause the recording and I'm going to do this side. Okay, so I did all the cabling over here as well. I was very consistent in my cabling to make it easier when we do all these configurations. As you're going to see, we have a lot of fast Ethernet 5s to the left and to the right ports here. Fast Ethernet 6 going down, same over here. Very similar setup here. The only difference is we don't have an IP phone over here. I just connected a regular PC. So we'll only do the IP phone on this side, the voice over IP there. The other thing I want to mention, and let me show this from the lab, if you see red link lights on these multi-layer switches or on the IP phone, it means that you most likely forgot to do the power supply. So don't forget to do that. The next thing is addressing. Rick was was good to you on this. Okay. I actually did all the addressing for you, but here is all the kind of the addressing schema right here. Okay. But let me kind of go through what we have here. Okay. And I can wand over these devices to verify. You may need to do that. Rick might have made some mistakes, but these devices, you should see all the IP addressing. So let me mention a few things on how I did the addressing here. So you're going to see certain devices in the 10.10.1.10.10 subnet /24. Okay, we've got one there. Oh, this should be 101. So I'll fix that. 10.101. That's in a different network. But this is 10.10.1. What else do we have? That's all that we have in 10.10.1, I think. 10.20, 10, okay. Let's take a look at another subnet here. We have devices on the 10.20.1, 10.20.1.0/24 subnet. We have one there. We have another device here on that subnet and another device over here on this subnet. Okay. We have this device here, which is on a different subnet, 10.121.0. This device here is also on a different subnet, 10.101.1. Made a little mistake there on that. Over on this side, let me use some different colors for this. Okay, we have 10.30, 10.30.2/24 subnet. We have another device on that subnet here. Let's see another one right there. And then we have some devices. Let's see if I can find a different color here. Try violet. The 1040 subnet, 1040, I said 1040.2. Okay. And we have the device here on a different subnet as well, the 10.122.0. A little bit about how I chose these numbers. And, this was just to make it easier on me to remember things. But you notice over here that everything, that it's 10.10.1, 10.21. Now, the first 3 numbers is the subnet, but see that one here and one here? That's because this is actually going to be our distribution 1 switch later, but this will be kind of this is on kind of this side here. Over here, they have 2, 10.30.2, 10.40.2. I used the 2 here on both these. This is on the second side, the other side. So that's how I came up with that. But what's important is that these three numbers, the first three numbers, the first 24 bits is what's unique. 10, 10, 1, 10, 21, 10, 32, 10, 33, 10, 101, 1. I don't want to forget that one, or 10, 121.0. The first, these are all /24 subnets. Okay. We actually have what? 4 subnets over here and 3 subnets over there. Okay, is that correct? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so let me get rid of all that. So I did all that addressing for you, and you can check everything. You'll check, see that we have same default gateways for the devices in the same networks. Okay, so so these are the breakdown of our subnets. You can see which devices are in the 10, 10, 1, 0, 10, 21, 0, 10, 30, 2, 0, 10, 40, 2, 0, 10, 121, 0, 0, and 10, 122, 0, 0. Okay, all /24s. Okay, this is how I did, and I'll show you this, but this is how I did the addressing, so you didn't have to do that. Rick is such a good guy. All right, giving myself a little pat on the back for doing this for you. But, I wanted us to focus mostly on doing, this is stuff that you should be able to have done. But to configure any of these PCs, I just click on config, and let me do fast Ethernet here. This shows the IP address subnet mask. So if you need to make a change, or if Rick made a mistake, that's where you can check to look at that. Settings, we have our default gateway. I even put the DNS server in there. Our DNS server, as we'll see later, is, you can see it right. Here's our DNS server. We'll get there later. Okay, well, we just did static IP addressing. Now, the only device that does not have a static IP address is a device that has to get its address from DHCP. So right now, this IP phone does not have an address. Okay, what else we have to do? Let's do our wireless LAN here. So first thing I'm going to do is go to this access point here. And I'm going to go to the config tab and make sure, yes, the default of the display name is actually default. Well, let's go here. I'm going to click on, let's see, port 1. So display name is default. I changed it to guest 1, so that's the one we're working on. But this is what we need to change. I went to port 1 here. See, it says default. We're going to change this, the SSID. I'm going to change that to match the display name, guest 1. So I already did the display name for you. Display name is just for packet tracers, just so that we can see it. See how it says here, guest 1, that's the display name. See, it says there, guest 1, that's the display name. I'm just going to make sure it matches that. And that's all we need to do there. Okay, let's do the same thing over here. Let's do config. That's my display name, port 1. Let's have it guest 2. That's the SSID. That's what users will see when they're searching for the access point. Guest 2. Okay, I did that. All right. But I'm not done. I need these laptops. Let's do it just like you would do on a real laptop. But we got to do a little bit more on these laptops. Okay, the first thing is I'm going to zoom in here. And you will notice it actually has a fast Ethernet NIC. Okay, so I got to remove that, but I can't just remove it. It's going to tell me you got to power it off first. Oh, right here, the power button, power it off. There we go. Now I can remove the fast Ethernet NIC. And what I'm going to do is drag and drop one of the wireless NICs. I'm going to take this one here, the AC, drop it in there, and then power the laptop on. Okay, great. Now, I'm not done yet. Okay, what I have to do is go into the config tab here. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is make sure, see, I have this wireless NIC now. That wasn't there before. I'll show you on the next one. Okay, the SSID. Oh, I've already set it for you for guest one. Okay, so that should be associating. Let's see what happens here. It's on. Let's make sure I've got that spelled correctly on my SSI, my right here. Guest one. Yeah, let's take a look here. Let's see what's going on. Okay, it just took a moment here for it to actually associate. Now, the other thing I have to do, and I've done this for you, but if I haven't, check. You need to configure the IP address. So the IP address is 10.121.0. That all first three is the first 24 bits is the network address, .100, subnet mask. Okay. We're not doing any authentication or anything here. We can talk about that later. Let's go up here to settings. Make sure we have a default gateway, 10.121.0.1, and the DNS server. Now, right now, we don't have a default gateway configured. We'll get there in a later lab. Okay. Right now, we're just configuring the addressing and the cabling. Okay. All right, let's go over here to this access port point here. I do have guest two, that's already set. Okay, port one, good. All right, let's go over here to this laptop, see what we've got here. Again, I have to, let's zoom in here. Power off, remove that fast Ethernet NIC. Oh, I was going to show you what it looked like. Yeah, let me put that back. There's the fast Ethernet NIC. The config tab. See, it has fast Ethernet right there, no wireless. That's what I want to show you. Looks like I've already done most of the addressing, but we'll get back to that. Fast Ethernet. So what I want to do, physical, turn it off, remove. Oh, it looks like I put in the wrong NIC card there. Go here to wireless. There we go. Power it back on. And now when I go to the config tab, I see wireless. Okay. Okay. Now for the SSID, I've already got it set up in guest two, but make sure if it's not guest two, change that. Okay. I'm going to configure addressing. I see it's DHCP. That's what it defaulted to, but and there's that 169.254 address. Oh, that means it did not get a valid address from a DHCP server. But that's okay. What we're going to do is 10.122.0 network, 10.122.0, and it's going to be the .100 subnet map. Oops, I know I saw that. 10 dot, only one dot there, 122.0.100. There we go. My subnet mask, 255.255.0. Okay. Then that's the wireless. Again, guest two, this SSID. Let's go up here. Default gateway will eventually be 10.122.0.1.1. And the DNS server will be 10.2.1.10. Okay. And eventually this will associate here. But while we're waiting on that, let me just bring over the lab again. So show you how to do all this, okay? So in the lab, it talks about the addressing, okay? Giving the addressing here. Okay. So this is what we should end up with. Okay, what we did is we just added this part here. All of that good stuff. Okay, now we haven't done any switch configuration. Okay. All right. But I'm going to pause here and move this out of the way. Okay, we can see that is what we have here. Matter of fact, kind of make that a little bigger just so we can talk about it a little easier, maybe. Yeah, that's a little easier, isn't it? Now, by the way, sometimes you've got a packet tracer, you got to kind of jiggle things a little bit. So if you don't see this associating, what you may need to do is something like go to the wireless NIC, turn it off and turn it back on, things like that. Okay. Let's talk about what we have here. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about broadcast domains. These are all layer 2 switches, right? All layer 2. Okay. So let me bring up my little writing tool here. And let's talk about, we actually have 2 broadcast domains. This is one broadcast domain here. And here's a separate broadcast domain. So we have 2 broadcast domains. That means a Ethernet broadcast, like an ARP request sent out by PC0 here, maybe getting the one in the IP address of the MAC address, I'm sorry, of this device here. Who's going to see it? Everybody. Everybody's going to see it. Okay. Regardless of whether they would actually need to see it, only if they're on the same network, subnet as PC0, would they ever need to see an ARP request from PC0. Okay. And so, but everybody will see it. Same thing over here. Okay. If we have a ARP request, an Ethernet broadcast sent out by PC7, okay, sorry about that. There we go. My reminder for lunch. Okay, that's going to go out all interfaces. Remember, broadcast is sent out by switch out all interfaces except the incoming interface. Now, by the way, spanning tree, it's not going to send it out this interface here. Okay, and here it actually would send it out both interfaces, but it's going to get blocked here. That's what prevents the loops. We'll be talking about spanning tree in this set of labs. Matter of fact, we'll be having a separate lab discussing spanning tree. Okay. What else would I like to talk about here? Let's do this here. Okay. Which devices on the same IP network can ping each other? Well, let's take a look. Okay. If I go down, let's see, what should I use? I'll use PC2 here. Okay. PC2 should be able to ping any device on its network. Okay. So if I go to desktop, and this is first of all, let's verify my configuration. IP config. Okay. Yep, there's, okay. All that looks good. I don't have a default gateway configured. Okay. But I should be able to ping, let's say PC3 10.20.1.101. Okay. All right. We're in the same, have to be in the same broadcast domain, same group of switches. Okay. But who saw that ARP request? Okay. ARP-A. I see now this PC2 had to send out an ARP request to get the MAC address of PC3. And who saw that? Well, everybody saw it. Yes, even devices on other networks saw it, but they ignored it like everybody else. Again, PC0 would never need to see an ARP request from PC2. The only way PC2 can reach PC0, they're on different networks, is via a router or multi-layer switch. We'll get, right now this is not acting as a router. We'll get there later. Okay. Let's verify that. Matter of fact, let me ping. Okay, I'm on PC2 here, 10.2.1.100. Okay, I made the display names the IP addresses, so make it easier for us. 10.10.1.100. Notice I can't ping it. Even if we're on the same switch, can't ping. Okay. because this device is the only reason way I can reach you is I've got to get the MAC address for my default gateway and send the frame to the default gateway, my router, and let it route. I don't have a router. We'll do that in a later lab. Okay. You can remind ourselves about MAC address tables and all that. We'll see that the ARP request went out to all, so that's going to time out here. Yeah, we can take a look. I do not have the switches configured, so I've got to be careful in my commands because I don't want to make a typo where I don't have my my logging synchronous or no IP domain lookup. Let's go to, I do show MAC address table. There we go. Okay. So it's just looking at layer 2. So, you know, these are the layer 2 addresses that it has learned. And we'll talk more about these MAC addresses, but most of these are, well, has the MAC address from PC2. Okay, FA06, that's the MAC address. See this address right there on FA06? That it learned when it received a frame from PC2. Are you sure that's really PC2's MAC address, Rick? How can we verify that? Well, let's do this. Let's go to, move that to the side. Let's go to PC2. What's its MAC address? Okay. I can look at this in the config as well, but let's do it here. ipconfig/all, just like we do on a Windows device. And the MAC address ends, let's just look at that, 0B33. Is that what we had in our MAC address table? 0B33. Yep, right there, 0B33 on FA06. So the switch learned on FA06 is that MAC address. Okay. We'll talk more about that all a little later. But right now, only devices on the same IP network can ping each other. Again, these lights here are amber to prevent to prevent a spanning tree loop, a loop. Okay, we'll talk more about that when we get into spanning tree, but we have loops in our that go unblocked without spanning tree in our Ethernet LAN, bring down our network or in matter of seconds. All right. So we're going to be adding more to this. Of course, we're going to be configuring these switches. We're going to be doing things like VLANs and trunking and ether channel and routing to turn these into layer 3 switches. We're going to connect these to the core switches, make it part of the rest of the network. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up. Okay. But for now, make sure your devices in the same networks can ping each other. Make sure you save your configuration. Very important. All right. And I'll see you in the next lab.